Hello and welcome to Primetime Watchmaking in the News, your monthly watchmaking news bulletin coming back on what happened on the watchmaking planet and what to expect in the month to come. In today's episode, not too many novelties presented recently. We just came out of Baselworld and brands are still digesting this, but some other important business news. Firstly, and on a positive note, March marks the first month in a 20-month period of a slight recovery of Swiss watchmaking export figures. Compared to March 2016, numbers are up by 7.5% in terms of revenue and by 8.5% in terms of volume, and we'll see if we can talk about a trend in the months to come. I'm personally not that optimist. I really think that the market dynamics have structurally changed, and again this implies that brands still need to adapt to these new rules. Nevertheless, it's still positive to note that these encouraging signs have been witnessed on almost every single market in terms of geography, and when it comes to timepiece segmentation, well, let's say that the portion of precious metal watches is still declining. So better priced and more affordable watches is still the way to go. But the big news of the month came from Breitling, reason why I'm wearing my old school Breitling from the early 70s. Yes, the brand just got sold to a private equity fund, CVC Capital Partners, and Breitling was one of the last important independent power brands out there, and the potentiality of this sale had been in the rumor mill for quite some time now. Without, or before I should say, doing a proper who's who on this iconic brand, let's quickly recall that the brand had been purchased and taken over in the 70s by Ernest Schneider when it was on the verge of going bankrupt in the midst of the very brutal quartz crisis. The brand remained family owned, with his son Teddy overlooking the development of the brand until today. So what does this sale tell us, as it is the first big move in terms of merger and acquisition since quite a while in the industry, and I would say that the last big deal had been the purchase of Ulysse Nardin by Kering some almost 3 years ago. This current deal is nevertheless quite different, as before we had more seen portfolio consolidations of the big power groups, and this time the brand is going in much different hands with a pure financial approach to it. So we know that investment funds are not there for the beauty of the art, but simply to make money. There are no charitable consideration in this move. Well, we can say this for both ends of the transaction. As mentioned, Breitling had been in family-owned hands, and Teddy Schneider and his sister didn't really come to the same conclusion when it came to the future of the company, and this had a major impact on what just happened. There was apparently some potential interest by groups of the industry, but the asked selling price was set too high for anyone to make a move, especially in this not so favorable context for watchmaking, but also, and very importantly, because most of these groups already had in there or have in their portfolio what it takes to be positioned where Breitling stands. So sports watches, 5 to 10,000 Swiss francs, to make it very simple, Swatch with Omega, LVMH with TAG, and more importantly with what is currently being done with Zenith. And for Kering and Richemont, well, I think they have already quite enough challenges in front of them right now, and pockets are not as deep as they used to be. So overall, the transaction is rumored to have set the value of Breitling around the 800 million Swiss franc mark, with CVC Capital Partners taking 80% of the company. The remaining shares will remain in the personal hands of Mr. Schneider, but apparently the fund has also an option on these shares in the future. So what will happen to Breitling, and what is the strategy of CVC? Well, first let's remember that over the last 10 years Breitling has invested huge amounts of money developing their own movement manufacturing capabilities, following what had been decided by the Swatch Group in terms of significantly reducing the delivery of ébauche and ETA movements to their competitors. These investments reflected dearly on Breitling prices, as they often doubled or almost tripled over the last few years, and therefore positioned the watches head-to-head against such big names as Rolex and Omega. So obviously getting complicated, especially when you don't have the distribution power of the big groups or the players behind you. So we saw prices go up, volumes going down, and communication using the same strings it had been using for quite a while, and not necessarily talking any longer to younger generations of customer, not even mentioning that, for instance, in a market like China, well, the brand doesn't benefit from it. The watches are too big or too sporty, well, at least this is the perception for the time being. So probably a tough challenge ahead of CVC, especially that they have no experience when it comes to watchmaking, Breitling being the only watch brand or watch-related business in their investment portfolio. And just for the fun story, it represents approximately only 1% of their various assets. So CVC will probably succeed in rationalizing some costs, but what will be their impact on developing the brand and the revenues? Well, this is still to be seen. But we know from the start that such investors are there to make a return when it comes to dividends, but more importantly that it will most likely want to resell Breitling at a premium in a few years, and to do so when you already bought the brand at a pretty high price will not be a simple thing to achieve. So the future will tell us in a few years, and let's quickly remember what we saw at Baselworld with this smart collaboration between Breitling and Tudor, with this exchange of calibers between the two brands. Tudor providing their in-house three-hander and Breitling supplying the chronograph movement to Tudor. So could Breitling become a wider provider of movements and better amortize these initial investments? Well, we'll see. And now I will talk about something completely different, because you have been many to note that I recently changed glasses. And there is a small story behind this that I will very briefly uncover today. I have this good friend, Andre, who is an architect, but let's say an artist because he has many ways of expressing his creativity, and one of his latest ideas was to design these glasses. The goal was to do something special and sell these glasses in order to finance the production of some crazy movie activity. I will come back on this in a later stage, but we just wanted to share the fact that we went to visit where they produce these glasses in the French Jura Mountains, not too far away from here, and there were some pretty interesting parallels between what we're accustomed to in watchmaking and what they do there. Well, first of all, I was really happily surprised to see how much the human intervention is crucial in manufacturing these glasses. Raw material comes from cellulose acetate, so basically wood, and then like with watchmaking, this material is shaped using 5-axis CNC machining, but then it's all manual from then on. Assembling, adjusting, polishing, everything is done by hand on these small series. And initially these glasses were only meant to be sunglasses, but I thought it was pretty funny to make an optical version for me, as my eyes got a little bit shakier over the last few months. So I've already been asked many times what were the glasses, where you could get them from, and this will be unveiled later on. We're still in the prototype stage of the project, and the very first small series is just being manufactured as we're talking. So coming back to watchmaking, May is an important month for watch auctions held here in Geneva, and we'll publish very shortly a series of contents on the main highlights presented by the big houses, with some pretty spectacular timepieces. I can already tell you this. There will obviously be the inevitable Pateks, but one of the main stars of these auctions will be an ultra-rare Rolex considered as a collector's grail, and should surpass a few records already set by the crown. And lastly, and sadly, I have to announce that we unfortunately have to slightly postpone the production of our new watchmaking road trip season number 2. I really tried to make it happen, but for agenda reason, it has been too complicated to set up. And as you can imagine, this is a rather costly thing to organize on our side, and I really need the conditions to be perfect to offer you something that is really worth it and something unbelievable and really special. But don't worry, this is only temporary, and I would really like to thank everybody that participated in this casting phase. We received plenty of very cool candidacies. We had gone through our initial selection process, but I had to take a decision, though I pushed this as far out as possible. So all my apologies for those of you that were already getting excited with this new watch tripping season, but I promise we'll get back on this as soon as possible. But the good news is that we're working on a new concept, going a bit more on the technical side, and I will give you further information rather shortly on this new series. So thank you for your time, thanks for all your comments, and see you real soon for some additional watchmaking adventure. See you soon.